Iowa's News Now Sports has your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
What we got? I'm starting it off?
We can ask questions, unless you got something you want to say.
You tell me.
Omar Young, coachable. Lots to get to here on a Friday edition of Eye on the Hawks. Mitch Fick, boy, great start. Mitch Fick, Owen Sebring, Mike Howell there. There's a lot to get to, so I might as well forget the name. We've got to talk about
maybe a record number of sound bites.
Omar Young. We were talking. There was a lot of editing this week to get clips of video. If you're watching on YouTube on Friday or whenever, clips that have just been sitting in the archives for up to 2 years. Finally, we get to talk offensive linemen. We'll break them down in a little bit. Omar Young, you just heard a little bit from. We'll get an introduction to him after hearing from him for the first time since he's got on the job in Iowa City like 4 weeks ago. Still learning names, it sounds like. We'll check out the wide receiver and tight end rooms. Caden Weegens on scholarship. Take down your Reddit threads. It happened. It's over. And Brendan Sullivan, who of course had to jump into the portal Friday after we recorded. We'll look back on him, hear from the fellas about his legacy over 10 months at Iowa because impacts were made. But Bryce George had the courtesy of jumping in and committing to the Hawkeyes before we recorded today. Bryce George has the chance to be a stud in 2025 for the Hawkeyes, a 3-time national champion from Ferris State University out of lovely Big Rapids, Michigan. Played for Coach Tony Annese, who's as good of a leader and human being as you will find in college football. Bryce is a kid that was out of the Detroit area, was offered to go to Western Michigan when Tim Lester was still the head coach there. He was a tight end, DN prospect coming out of high school, a heck of a basketball player too. He has morphed into a 6'5", 315-pound, 2-time All-GLIAC and first-team All-American offensive tackle. He's played a little guard too. Might be your dude to keep an eye on at the blind side for Mark Gronowski. You might be coming in to push Jack Doetzler for that left tackle position. But Bryce George, welcome to Hawkeye Nation, bud. You're in good hands in the offensive line room there with George Barnett. But he's a fun pickup. Now to the guy that, again, we just talked about, who jumped into the portal like 6'4", last week, like literally as the 6 o'clock broadcast was wrapping up. Check the phone. Oh, Brendan Sullivan's in the portal. Mm-hmm. Expected, maybe a little surprised at the timing, but again, 625 yards, 7 touchdowns, doesn't blow the doors off when you look at it just on a stat sheet without context, but talk to his teammates and talk to fans too. Number one, left a big impression in a short amount of time.
Well, he was a great friend of mine, and I mean, it was kind of sad seeing him leave, but I mean, just what he did coming in and kind of taking over after Cade. It was just cool to see him. We really haven't had a dual threat guy in a while, so just seeing him and all the fans and everything he had, it was awesome to just see him. And I mean, I'm super excited to see where he goes, and I know he'll do the same thing wherever he goes.
Yeah, he was really talented. I mean, sucks to see him go. That was my guy, but I know he's going to do great things at his next school.
I think Sully's legacy is in the locker room. Sully's one of my closest friends. Being from Michigan, we took some trips back together, and I can't say enough good things about him. One of the things he is passionate about is his faith. Changed my faith walk. There's excitement about it, and I don't know. It's sad to see him leave, but I wish him the best, and I'm happy for him that hopefully he finds a great opportunity somewhere.
I love that dude for sure. He's a great leader, and we'll definitely miss his leadership, his passion that he brings to the game. It was probably his decision, so I wish him the best of luck, and yeah, we'll miss him for sure.
It's a tough spot. Mark Gronowski's there, probably or almost certainly your one, and he was going to be maybe the backup if he stuck along. But final thoughts, closing thoughts, I guess, on the Brendan Sullivan era at Iowa. Again, 10 games, 3 starts, some yards, some tutties, but electric was the word we used quite a bit to describe him.
Yeah, I'm always going to have fond feelings for Brendan, who was a really nice kid. Like it seemed like everybody in the quarterback room really liked him. He got along with everybody. He had a good relationship with Jacob Gill coming into this team, and when he went back and played Northwestern and helped beat his former team at Northwestern, there were a lot of guys on the other sideline who still really loved Brendan Sullivan. Good kid, and I just am always going to remember that game where he came in, and the crowd was chanting his name, and I mean, I think it was pretty early in the season even that Hawkeye fans could see that the Cade McNamara experiment had kind of gone sideways, and so it was time to see something else. And so the joy and exuberance that Hawkeye fans got when Brendan Sullivan came into that game midway through the year was something exceptional. And just wish he could have stayed healthy through the end of the year. He had to come out in the middle of that UCLA game, and he did get back healthy for the bowl game, but maybe just never quite returned to his normal, traditional Brendan Sullivan self. But yeah, always going to have fond feelings for Brendan.
Yeah, he was kind of like the guy fans wanted to see, obviously, like you mentioned. The Cade McNamara, after a few games, you knew that wasn't going to go quite the way that we had expected when he came in from Michigan. He electrifying in some of those games. It was an up and down when you look at UCLA, and then the bowl game gave Iowa a chance to win. Came up short, but like you mentioned, though, like such a small impact, or I shouldn't say that, a big impact, but the playing time, I mean, played in majority like 4 games, came in on those red zone package, which was a huge help for their offense, huge spark on that. But when you're looking at it, it's like you said, Mark Gronowski can move. He's not more of a pocket passer, kind of can't shift away from the defense like Cade was. So I don't know if he was going to get those packages this season. He's got 1 year eligibility left. Makes sense. I guess at first I was kind of confused, or I was surprised that it didn't happen after spring ball. But I think those jobs are kind of hard to find now. Mm-hmm. The later you wait, the harder it's going to be for him to actually get a job. I mean, in a Power 5, I don't think he's going to the one that's open, like in Tennessee. Yeah. But like a group of 5 even, like those at least the quarterback position, I think other positions you can wait, but I think, he had to go in earlier rather than later.
You mentioned the red zone packages and how important those were, and I mean, you look at the Iowa State game when they came up short in the red zone a couple times, and so it should not be understated how important it was to have a guy like Brendan in there who was effective in the red zone, even in the games that he wasn't starting.
I think a lot of fans talked about it, and you heard Caden Weegan, a guy who grew up in this area and watched a lot of Hawkeye football. C.J. Beathard, the last time you had a legitimate dual threat, I mean, Nate Stanley could run a quarterback sneak for 6-7 yards if he needed to. Spencer could run a little bit, but ended up, being far more of a pocket guy. Cade, a little bit of movement here and there. Alex Padilla, that's what everyone clamored for in 21 and 22 to get him in because he could at least move. Brendan Sullivan is as electric of a player as Iowa's had at quarterback. You could maybe argue since Brad Banks, just in terms of what he could do with his feet. I mean, the pellets flying up against Wisconsin, that Seneca run he had. If he scores against Missouri, and I still submit that it's an all-time play without him scoring, if he scores that on the go over to Owen's side of the field and then run all the way back to my side, if he scores that is, it might not be Warren Holloway-esque, but that is an unbelievable. I mean, they still talk about Seneca Wallace's run on TBS when TBS was showing college football back in the day, and that's a 25-year-old player. So, but he was just bringing something to the position that fans for at least a decade have begged for in some capacity. Get us a quarterback that if something breaks down can go pick up 8-9 yards on his own. And I think it was like his first snap he did that, dropped back to pass and ran around to the far side on the northwestern sideline and picked up 7 or 8 yards. And you go, yep, haven't had that. And then the way he conducted himself, I think it says a lot that Tyler Barnes, before Brendan, if you're watching on YouTube, even posted this to social media, his official departure letter and statement, that the On3 and 24/7 guys that are already reported he was going to be in the portal, and Tyler Barnes already shared that and said, somebody's about to get a hell of a competitor and a great leader. Kirk Ferentz, it felt like, went out of his way throughout this offseason to emphasize, maybe foreshadowing, knowing he was going to go in the portal. This guy got here last June and picked up everything and has been a fantastic leader. I think there is nothing but mutual respect across the board, and I think everybody in that locker room just wants to go see Brendan Sullivan go somewhere and go nuts and have a great senior campaign, one that he's certainly earned. And I would just wish he would have had a longer run. I think his longest run in all this was maybe 20 yards in that kind of garbage time against Ohio State. He was a guy with the ball in his hands. We haven't said it a lot about quarterback at Iowa. If he kept the ball on an RPO or something, you held your breath a little bit because there was a chance you were going to see some magic. And man, a few times we got to see some magic from Brendan Sullivan.
I almost immediately refuted your claim against most electrifying since Brad Banks' position, but then I went through in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, because
he's probably
Tate was electrifying, but it was with his arm, not with his legs. Yeah. But he could.
Brad was all around. He was a Davey O'Brien winner, but just Brendan.
Just haven't had it at Iowa.
Yeah. There's been so many quarterback departures over the last few years at Iowa, which I mean is true of probably every program, has seen the same number of quarterbacks leave for the portal. But I don't know if there's been as much goodwill to a departing quarterback as there has been to Brendan Sullivan as he leaves, just because I think everybody appreciates and notes his place and the importance of last season and what he did and what he brought to this team in the second half of the season. And so everybody kind of knew the writing was on the wall that Gronowski was going to be the guy this year, and so there wasn't going to be much of a place for Brendan. But I think that everybody within and without of the program really wishes him fond departure.
It's kind of a cutthroat business on each side. You know, I think a lot of players get a lot of crap from fans when they enter the portal, as often as the players are in the portal. Mm-hmm. But he came here probably thinking, all right, next year I'm the guy, right? I'll probably sit behind be a backup to Cade, and that's my job. Well, Iowa was like, all right, we think you're good, but I think we need better if we want to get to the goals we want to accomplish. And they go out and grab Mark Gronowski from South Dakota State. I mean, I'm not going to fault Iowa for doing that too, because that's an amazing pickup, and he's a great quarterback, great leader, and that's who you want number one. And kudos to Brendan to be like, all right, let's see what you can do your one last season of eligibility.
Correlation might not be causation here, but I also think we heard a little bit questions being asked Thursday during media availability, and there's been some rustlings out there in the ether too that the offense has been clicking pretty well during the spring. Mm-hmm. I also think Hank Brown might be cooking. I think Hank Brown's maybe come in and made a statement of he's the number two and he's got a shot to. Sure. I'm not saying there's a quarterback controversy, but give it a game and a half, and if there's back-to-back 3 and outs, and you're like, well, Hank's doing great. It depends on what he does on Saturday at the scrimmage too, next Saturday. I think Hank Brown maybe is impressing some folks pretty early in his Hawkeye tenure as well.
And Hank's got a few more years, right?
Yeah,
he could be
exactly.
content with being a backup.
Now he's your guy in 26. Him and Jackson Stratton, Jimmy Sullivan, whoever might be battling it out. Well, it finally happened, folks. We heard your calls. Maybe the University of Iowa heard your calls, your emails, your texts. Caden Weegen's on scholarship. He actually facetiously thanked the media for carrying a torch for him yesterday. But the nation's best returner last year, still a walk-on, really his first expanded role. Needless to say, he ran with it all the way to the end zone at least twice. I still think Illinois State was good. TJ Hall didn't hold anybody. But an interesting small-town, hometown staple reaction and location for Caden Weegen to get a call from Kirk Ferentz about a week after the bowl game.
I was out with my buddies eating at a sports bar in my hometown, and I saw Coach Ferentz calling. I was like, oh, yep, better take this one. And he told me that, and I told them and the family, and they were all super excited. So it was a cool moment.
So did you treat everybody? Did you buy dinner then?
Yeah, that's the first thing they said, too. I'm like, I don't have the money yet, guys. Sorry. You have to wait a little bit, but yeah.
You got offered a Scott. Was it at Sundown?
That's exactly where it was.
Sundown?
Yep.
That's awesome.
So, yep, we'll have that moment for the rest of our lives to share.
What does it mean to you to be on scholarship now?
It's just awesome. And I told them, even when I wasn't on scholarship, kind of just being a walk-on, that motivated me even more. So I'm kind of glad I came in on as a walk-on, and just super excited to be with the guys this year and have a walk-on mentality.
So for those from Iowa County or Williamsburg, you finally heard Sundown mentioned on Eye on the Hawks. This is a little corner establishment right near the town square. I believe if you're driving south off I-80, you turn in right by where Mary Welsh Elementary used to be in the Sundown. I can't imagine what the Busch Light quota is usually at a place like that. It's your quintessential small-town Iowa bar and a great spot there in Williamsburg. So what a formative memory and moment for Caden Weegen to have with, I'm sure, a bunch of his old Raider teammates back there enjoying some time at the old Sundown. Pretty awesome. And Mike finally gets, hopefully, his wish that a scholarship for Caden Weegen can maybe go into some receptions as well. But all we have,
get him on offense.
I think I might have put one Caden Weegen reception in here. Or no, I did. No, we'll see that in the wide receiver.
The wide receiver portion. Yeah, I mean, he's electrifying, and I don't know what the process is. You probably can't be put on mid-season, but he was, you could tell he was one of the best returners in the country last year from halfway through the season. Mm-hmm. But he deserves it. It's awesome, and yeah, I've been clamoring for him to get the ball through the air, and I think we'll see more of that this year, at least.
So he seems to. He said that was kind of a big thing for him coming back and building out that wide receiver film.
Yeah.
So he'll be in.
Yeah, he knows he wants to compete at the next level as well, and he knows that if he wants to do that, he's got to have something else to offer outside of just returns, and so he wants to pick up some film at tight end, or excuse me, not tight end, although why not?
He did have
at wide receiver.
A little small.
Were you in there for? It was late. I think I might have been watching your stuff or somebody else. He talked about being at the Jet Awards in Omaha about a week ago, whenever it was, and there were Heisman Trophy winners, other guys who have won the Jet, some of the greatest returners in history, and some of them responded to him on their very first impression, "Oh, you're taller than we thought you'd be." And he's like, "That's the first time anybody's ever said that to me." So he's played big for sure, and it's pretty cool to see Caden Weegan. Man, we've got Williamsburg highlights of his from Eastern Iowa OT flying around there in Williamsburg, and now he's, again, established himself as the best returner in the country, and now looking for some wide receiver reps.
Yeah. I know Mike's, when he mentioned that he was going to be looking for wide receiver reps, Mike was the first guy that came to mind because he's been clamoring for it the last couple of years. And
yeah, I said his name wrong at first.
You say Wetchen?
Yeah, I
You're
said
not the first
Wetchen.
to do that, yeah.
Well, it's just like I was like, oh yeah, he's a shifty guy. Let's see, because we were
Legion families from Williamsburg, and there's somehow not all of them are related. It's like Hudipole and a bunch of other names down there where there's just different sects in different families. Not all of them are separated somehow.
He just caught my eye that 2023 Kids Day. It was after that, our first podcast, I believe. I was like, man, this guy's quick, and he can catch the ball. I wonder if he can get in there. And that was a time where, the wide receiving room, as we're going to transition into that topic real quick.
Yeah.
I don't know, since Amir Smith, Marset, and Brandon Smith, like, the cupboards in, I don't want to say bare, but like they have not had a lot of production. Except last year, Jacob Gill almost had 500 yards receiving, which was kind of a surprise. But at 2023, I saw the shiftiness and the way he could make plays, and I was just like, man, they need to get him on the field and just get him the ball in space.
Yeah, and he had that opportunity. Caleb Johnson has that big touchdown run against Illinois in 23 to win the West, facilitated by Caden Weegan getting thrown in there for Cooper. Had like an 18-yard punt return on something like that. Had one like go over his head that he kind of misjudged earlier in the game, and had a little redemption for a lot of folks. I feel like that was the moment. Like, okay, like punt return's going to be okay without Coop.
Man doesn't fair catch. I think that's what Scott Sable might have said to me. Man does not fair catch.
Well, there was a time in Iowa football, you remember this, I don't remember the exact years, where I feel like Kirk did not trust his kick returners. This is before Cooper.
There were guys that were kind of back there just to fair catch.
They wouldn't even do that. They let it bounce. And this was probably like 7 or 8 years ago. I wish I would look this up. I just came to my mind, though. I don't know. It was like 3 or 4 years in a row where like they just would not catch the ball.
No slight. I think Max Cooper was back there on punt returns sometimes, and I think he probably had a few returns, but I think there were others just maybe not full faith in whatever part of special teams. But hey, more often than not, I always got a pretty reliable returner back there, and they're usually making plays on other parts of the ball as well, as Mike mentioned. Wide receivers, 2019-2020, that Amir Smith-Marset, Brandon Smith, Tyrone Tracy, Nico Raggiani was your number 4. Those are some really good wide receiver cores, and maybe a chance to get a little closer to that this year. A lot of returning experience. You're about to hear from Sam Phillips, the Chattanooga transfer for the first time. TJ Washington, he was listed as a running back. He came out yesterday for wide receiver availability. He talks a little bit about Tim Lester's view for him, but let's listen to the wideouts. You got a Seth Anderson that's finally healthy in the spring in 2025. There's some cautious optimism there in the receiver room.
We got some weapons this year for sure. I think we're going to do some things they ain't never seen before, and we got a lot of talent in the room. We're going to be making plays all year.
I'm trying to learn everything. They got me kind of playing. They had me playing like the Z and skills and drills, and now I'm playing the X. So I'm just trying to learn everything all the way to F. So just so like coming in the fall, I can learn everything and be good and ready to go.
He just said that pretty much that I'm an athlete, and he gonna put me in a situation where I can make a play, and I'm just hold my end of the bargain and do it.
Sure. I'm sure that's been fun. It's great to just get out and make plays however you can. But that's a little extra work for you.
It's always fun to have the ball in your hand, so I don't really complain. I just make sure whenever I get a chance, make a play.
It sounds like the offense has been making some big plays this spring. Is that what you've seen?
Most definitely, yeah. Just watching the film from last year, I was talking to somebody else about it. I can only imagine, like, with me learning in the spring about offense, I can only imagine the whole offense trying to learn a new offense when Coach Lester came in So that's probably, like just trying to get used to a certain offense whenever you've been running something for so long. So they've definitely been playing a lot better, and they're playing a lot more confident, I can tell, and we're like making really big plays.
Year two, definitely, we've been clicking. We still have a lot to work on for sure. We can just be a lot more crisp with everything. But it's been exciting to have some big plays in practice, to see guys make plays, to just have that camaraderie, to have that second year, have a year under our belts, and know what we're doing at this point.
Yeah, a lot of talk about year two of Tim Lester's offense. All last spring was just getting it installed and trying to figure out, new nomenclature and terminology. There's, I don't know if you had this experience yesterday talking to all these guys. I called it cautious optimism. There's a confidence there. I think there's a confidence in this receiving core, and really, even with the O linemen we'll hear from and the tight ends, I think they're having success this year. Now, is that partially because you've got a younger secondary, young linebacking core, maybe? But this is a group that I think they're ready to rewrite the narrative about the Iowa offense.
Yeah, Reese Vanderzee, talking to him, it seems like he just has more of a presence to him. He's bigger. He seems like he's just grown a little bit more in the last year, and so he's got a chance to be. I don't know. I mean, that's going to be once we get to the fall and are doing our bold predictions for the season. I could easily see a 1,000-yard receiver for the Hawkeyes this year, who's maybe not a tight end. I don't know. There could be something in the receiving core this year between Vanderzee and Jacob Gill, and if Seth Anderson is healthy, if he's back, Sam Phillips, don't know what he's going to bring to the table. Like, there's some legitimate weapons that we haven't seen in the last few seasons.
That 1,000-yard might be a little bit too bold for me, but the thing I like about this time, and we're talking about the Iowa receivers and stuff, and the past few years we've kind of like hoped that some newcomer would pop out or step up. They've got some guys who have done it, right? Jacob Gill had 99 yards receiving last year, something like that. He was a shorthanded, not a lot of drops, 411.
He was the first guy to go over 400 receivers since, 2019, I think it was. Something.
Yeah, like a long time. And you saw the Reese Vanderzee moments. He got hurt and after the Michigan State game, but he was a target. And now in the middle of that stretch, it was in and out, but you could see he could make plays. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm going to wait and see about this wide receiver group. I do think they're going to be a little bit more speedy, especially with Sam Phillips, and if Weegan gets more play at wide receiver this year.
Caden Weegan reception. There you go, Mike, on the video on YouTube.
And then lit up.
I'm a little bullish on this group. I think Sam Phillips could come in, and KJ Parker, who you're seeing there, he's number 12 now, but he was getting talked up during bowl prep, and he's in this mix as well. I think Sam Phillips could come in and be scary for defenses. Just watching his tape at Chattanooga, getting Gronowski in there, he's a dude that get him in space and let him cook. And Gill's like that. You've got speed with Seth and Weegan. There's just so much speed. And then you've got bigger guys like Dayton Howard, who's on the 2Ds, Jerry Bowie, who's gotten 1 reps dating back to 23. There's a lot in this group. And, we've been burned before thinking that there could be big things, but I don't know if you'll have a 1,000-yard receiver, but I think you have a chance to have a handful of 500-yard guys. And I think if you can have 2 to 3 500-yard receivers, or maybe a guy that goes for 800 and and 1 or 2 that go for 500 and 400, and then you're going to get production from the tight ends that we'll talk here in a little bit about. Can't ask for a whole lot more. I mean, let's just get over 2,000 yards in the regular season passing, because we haven't done that in a little while. But man, it's a group with a lot of potential. I think, and they've got experience too, and that's key.
And I think part of what gives me optimism that they'll have bigger numbers is just the lack of depth in the tight end room. I mean, there's still some good tight ends in there, but there's just not as many as we've seen in the past.
5 guys there, yeah.
And so I think they're going to have to lean on their receivers a lot more than they have in the past.
And there's no Caleb Johnson, right? He was a lot of the Iowa offense last year and probably took away from the necessity of Iowa to throw the ball because they needed to lean on that running game. And the biggest part, right, you mentioned it, Mitch, is Mark Gronowski, an accurate quarterback who through like 3 seasons is like a 64-ish, 63% completion percentage. Now last year, Iowa quarterbacks, when you look at their stats, they're all above 65 just because the limited amount of throws they made. I think Brendan was at 70. But I just think he's Marcus more of a accurate passer than we've had in the past 4 to 5 years.
Caleb was also their 3rd leading receiver last year in yardage.
But you have to go back and the kind of numbers you were talking about, Mitch, like the 500 yard for the receivers. to 2019 when Amir Smith-Marset had 722.
I think they had 4 guys over 400 yards.
Yeah, Tyrone Tracy had 589. Nico had 439, and Brandon had 439, the same amount. Those were the top 4 leading receivers, and then Sam Laporta was 5th. So that was a good offense.
I mean, that's a team that won 10 games and blew the doors off USC in the Holiday Bowl, thankfully because of Amir Smith-Marset. Receiving touchdown, had a rushing touchdown, a kickoff return touchdown. But I mean, Amir's the perfect example of you got a guy that's faster than anybody else out there, and he's got hands. A lot can happen on offense or in a litany of other different ways, with the sweeps and everything. And Seth Anderson's on the record. He loves running sweeps. We know Caden Weegan can do that kind of stuff. I mean, we talked about Tim Lester, looking at the toys in the toy box and figuring out what he can do with stuff. I think even more so now. He doesn't have to worry as much about install and trying to get all the little nitty-gritty details right. That's always part of football, but not to the extent of just making sure everybody absolutely is learning this offense. They know this offense. We'll hear that from other guys that we talk to here in a little bit. But, yeah, now it's okay. You've got the confidence that you know the playbook, go play. And that's exciting. But you talked about tight ends, and no Luke Lachey, and a 2-year stretch here for the Iowa tight ends since Sam Laporta left where 23, everybody's hurt. Zach Ortworth's tight end 6 and ends up running with the ones eventually in the year. Same thing last year where there just wasn't a whole lot of tight end production, and Luke Lachey takes a big chunk of it out that basically had the same amount of production as Addison Ostrenga and Ortworth did combined. So there's a lot of meat on the bone, and Ortworth talked about the fact that Iowa needs to be balanced as they try to get that passing game going again. And Hayden Large, who gets another year, was at NAI Dort and got an email apparently about a week after the season ended that you got another year after that NCAA ruling that those non-NCAA guys could get another year of eligibility. He's excited. He's back, and he's running route, folks. Hayden Large could be making some catches this year.
Iowa has a reputation of being tight end you, but last year there was only 1 touchdown caught by a tight end as a Hawkeye. Yeah. Is there an idea this year that you guys want to get back to that, make sure that you up that total a little bit, get back to double digits or something?
I mean, you got call us tight end you. I mean, yeah, that's great to hear, but I mean, I feel like we still pride ourselves in being multidimensional tight ends. I mean, being able to be reliant or reliable in the run game, I mean, that's something you have to pride yourself on to play tight end here, whether you're catching balls or not. Being able to be trusted in the run game and being able to be in 12 personnel and being able to then not have to worry about that we'll get that block done or that we can protect a quarterback if needed in certain pros. And then when our numbers call in the pass game, we have to make the play. So, I mean, those are like the 3 things that we all focus on. And then wherever that leads to, I mean, we were running the ball really well last year, and Caleb had however many touchdowns. So, I mean, we were good with where the run game was going. But, yeah, we're just out here doing – coaches ask us, and we're just trying to push that standard forward in whatever aspect of the game it is.
Have you been running more routes this spring?
Yeah, I actually have. I'm just trying to develop into a more complete tight end. We only have 5 in the room right now. So we get a lot of reps, which is a blessing. Yeah. And so I've been putting my hand down, which I never used to last year. I've been running routes, so I'm just trying to become a better all-around football player.
Are you hoping to get in the end zone this year? Wouldn't that be nice?
I mean, it's cool. I like blocking a lot too, but we'll see what happens.
Is that kind of a thing you had to fall in love with, blocking? Because, I mean, Dort, you made plays, UC, you made plays. I mean, that's a different aspect. Yeah. It's not the prettiest thing.
No, it's not the prettiest thing, but you learn to love it. Like, you hear Jenny's Dunker talk about blocking, and it kind of inspires you to like blocking a little more. So
appreciate it, man.
I mean, he just eats, sleeps, and breathes blocking. Like, he just loves it so much, and I don't know, he's just inspiring about how he works and stuff too.
Maybe the least surprising revelation out of spring interviews is that Jennings Dunker loves blocking. I mean, that kid just feels like he is born and bred to be an offensive lineman and push people around.
Yeah. I don't know, guys. I think it might be time to change our lower third on Hayden Large. We've been listing him as an Iowa tight end / fullback. I don't know. Doesn't sound like he's getting a lot of fullback reps anymore. He's
running routes.
He's basically tight end.
Well,
the day Iowa goes to season without a fullback is the day I don't know. I think if they run up on the goal line, he's the fullback, right?
Yeah.
I'd like to think so. Sure. I also asked him. I have a theory. So Max White transfers out of the program. Joe Evans was the guy in the circle, the pregame hype man in 23. Max White took over for him in 24. So I asked Hayden, because he's been at that for the tight end room a little bit, like, are you the guy in the circle? Like, are you going to be the pregame hype guy? It sounds like that's a decision they make closer to the beginning of the season. Was a little aw shucks about it because it's Hayden Large. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the dude hyping the team up. He's just, and I talked about him with him about this a little bit too, of just coming in from Dort. You find a program in Iowa, people are immediately drawn to you because you play fullback and your name's Hayden, and he's just found such a home here. And he talked about crediting just Coach Woods and Coach Hodge and Coach Ferens and everybody, not just making him a better football player, but a better human being, a better man. You heard him talk about Sully helping him in his faith walk, and boy, just a great fit. And he's going to be a catalyst in this tight end room because of not just the lack of numbers. And if you're watching on YouTube, there's the only receiving touchdown by an Iowa tight end last year. Addison Ostringa off the little pitch from Brennan Sullivan. Tight end has some stuff to do. And again, do we think this is going to be a year that can get back to that 2022 production? They don't have a Sam Laporta as far as we know. Addison's definitely shown flashes. Orth's done the same. But do we think maybe the tight end position gets back to where we're used to it being?
I really don't know. I'm not as maybe confident about that right now as I am about the receivers maybe having a good season. I think that we're going to see some big things out of Ostringa and out of Zach Ortworth and Hayden Large. I think we're going to see obviously an increase in production in terms of his catches, but again, just with a little bit more of the lack of depth and with maybe a change in offense with Tim Lester there. I feel like the idea of this as tight end U, where they're producing 3-4 potential NFL tight ends a year, maybe those days are over. Maybe we still have a couple of good tight ends on this team, but maybe not quite the production that we're used to out of tight end.
Yeah, I'm not so sure either. I think Addison Ostringa and Zach Ortworth are great. I think Ortworth might be the one I'm more interested in moving forward. Not to say Ostringa can't be that. It's just you look at some of the numbers, and we'll have to see what the Tim Lester. We've been told that Tim Lester likes the 12 personnel, likes the tight ends, but year one didn't really see it. And now I think you have more potential weapons at running back and wide receiver. And, as a fan, you probably like that more than just, throwing it to the tight ends as much as Iowa does. But we'll have to see a lot of, I don't want to say unproven because Addison Ostringa has played a lot of football at Iowa, but at least as a pass catcher and a threat, like if you look back and you see Laporta, Noah Fant, George Kittle, all those guys. No one on that level yet. Not saying they can't get there, but it's more of a question mark. But I think they're all serviceable. I'm not worried about the position. I'm just worried about getting to that tight end U level. And you don't need that to be a good football team this year.
I would say the main thing that makes me think that there's maybe a change in culture at tight end is just what we saw out of Luke Lachey over the last couple of seasons, because he's a guy who obviously is getting a lot of attention from NFL teams, clearly has a talent there, but just, again, never he didn't have a touchdown his last couple of seasons at Iowa, a guy who maybe was talented enough to have more production but just never quite got there. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a change in what they're wanting out of this team. Maybe it's all just because Caleb Johnson was such a revelation last year that they didn't need to rely on a tight end. But I don't know. Maybe there's a change coming.
Well, and a big reason Luke Lachey didn't have a tight end in the last 2 years is because he broke his leg against Western Michigan in 23 and missed the.
He didn't miss the 2024 season. He had the whole year.
I mean, we spent quite a bit of time talking about the passing game just wasn't there too. And he had 26 catches
28
last year. 28. Excuse me, I can't read my own.
I had it right in front of me, so.
I thought I did too. But is the reason the tight end room and production was down because tight end use falling off, or is it because the passing game in general hasn't been there for the last few years? Jacob Gill had a 400 yards receiving season, and people are excited about that. Probably says a lot about the state of the passing game that 400 yards, F yeah.
I know, right? And I think Gill.
So I think that's part of it too. And Addison Ostringa was banged up for a bunch of the time last year, and Hayden's been playing a different role. So and when you're running the ball as well as Iowa did last year, you don't try to force that production to other spots. So it's a question mark, but I think there's a lot to be there. I do like that Addison Ostringa had the most Iowa stat line ever last year. I think we were talking about it against Troy. 5 catches, 9 yards, and a touchdown. That's just an awesome stat line, I think. But they're trying to get him the ball, and he had a stretch there in 23 where he was making quite a few catches, maybe not a ton of yards, but there's, I think these guys, Ortworth is definitely intriguing, but Addison's played quite a bit of ball too, that there's, there's receptions to be had out there, and there's opportunities to be had as well.
One story I want to share about Hayden Large that he talked about yesterday, Scott Docterman came up and he was asking about, I think the news had just come out about Lee Corso having his final game, final college game day coming up this season in week 1. So he was asking Hayden Large just about if he had any memories about Lee Corso or anything that came to mind. And so he just talked about how him and his dad watched a lot of football together on Saturday mornings and watched a lot of Lee Corso in game day. And he spoke a little bit more about the relationship that he had with his dad. And his dad has traveled. So this is, we're coming up on Hayden's, I think, 6th year of college football. Played 3 at Dordt, now 2 at Iowa. He said over that time, again, keep in mind Hayden Large's dad lives in
Hudsonville,
Michigan. He's only missed 1 game so far in his entire college career. You know, he played for 3 years in Sioux Center, which is maybe how long? A 14-hour drive, something like that from Hudsonville?
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, it's 6 from the Grand Rapids area to Cedar Rapids. So, yeah, hiking another 4 from Cedar Rapids to Sioux Center.
And keep in mind, I mean, that's games at UCLA and at Maryland. I mean, and the only reason he missed a game was a game that Dordt played in Oklahoma, and his dad had COVID, so he couldn't come. That's the only game that he's missed in 5 years of college football. Heck of a family and a legacy for Hayden Large and his dad.
I'll say one more thing about the tight ends before we move on. And, you know, we're talking about the tight end level now. I do think a majority, if we're going to put it in like a pie chart or whatever, majority it has been a lackluster quarterback play. I mean, it's harder to get those catches when the quarterbacks aren't accurate and they don't have time to throw, or they're, you know, Brendan took off and ran. So that's the main thing. It's a 10-hour and 22-minute drive from there. I just looked it up on Google Maps. Yeah. But to me, that's the biggest part of why the stats have fallen off. We'll see if that changes with Mark Gronowski at quarterback.
Although that, honestly, to me, though, I don't know, it almost makes me think the opposite, though, because, like, with a lackluster quarterback, a less accurate quarterback, it seems like they would be relying more on, like, short checkdowns to their tight end. It seems like that should result in more catches for the tight end and fewer for the wide receiver, but that's not what we saw last year, especially.
Yeah, you could also
saw a lot of checkdowns to the tight ends. I think most of, aside from Ortworth and Ostrenga in the bowl game, I think a lot of those were, you know, Johnny Pascuzzi had a 40-yard reception. That was 37 yards of yak, that little one that Brendan sent to him. I think there were a lot of short passes to tight ends and wide receivers. Yeah, but I think it all comes back to last year's such an outlier, too, because Caleb Johnson just set the world on fire. And there were so many things you didn't have to do. Their 2-minute drill was hand it to Caleb. Yeah. Caleb could get you into field goal range or get you a touchdown. I mean, it was just such a different approach to the entire game, whether it's what's happening at quarterback or because Caleb is a cheat code. I think there are just so many different things that you almost can't even like look at it as a template of what it can or can't be on offense. It's just such a strange season. Great season. It was fun to watch. Just such a interesting outliers in production and then lack thereof in some spots.
Yeah, and I do think, you know, some of the offenses too, or the defenses that were keying in would probably try and take Luke away other than, you know, Gale or Reese. So that could play a part too. But yeah, the season was kind of weird, and hopefully at quarterback at least, how long has it been since we've had one quarterback play at Iowa throughout the majority or the full season? In 2020?
Yeah, 2020. And that was a short season.
So, knock on wood, you're hoping for some health at that position just to see and get an honest assessment of some of these players. Mm-hmm. But I'm not worried about tight end. It's a curious position to me.
Yeah, it's just a couple of years of post-Sam Laporta just waiting for, and again, injuries like crazy in 23. Give Caleb the ball for every play, 24. So here we are in 25, and of course Caleb would be remiss if he didn't thank his offensive line for his success in 2024, and you lose two great guys, Mason Richmond at left tackle, who started 50-plus games there out of Overland Park, Kansas. Connor Colby, the pride of Cedar Rapids Jefferson, a guy who's waiting for his chance to hear his name called maybe here in the later rounds of the NFL draft next week. He moves on from right guard. You also lose some great veteran depth there, but the O-line that we talked to yesterday, Bo Stevens and Cade Pieper, your Solon Beef Days hay bale toss defending champion. He will be back to defend his title in July, talking about what the room looks like for them and what they are learning as they go in here now to 2025.
It's year two with Coach last year, so it's a lot easier already knowing a lot of the plays, and we've already worked through it and still running some new stuff, but it's like we've already gotten a practice run at this, and we kind of can start a little further ahead than we did last year.
What was the biggest thing you saw from yourself in 24? Banged up a little bit, but I mean, it's some of your best film, I'm sure.
Yeah, I know. I just felt like my lower body was a lot more athletic, and I could stay on top. Like my upper body could stay on my lower body a lot more often. And I felt like my pass pro is pretty good. Like, I don't know. They have me at like a 70% or something. I don't know how the grading works, but I would agree with that 100% of the time. They don't know our responsibilities, so. But no, I feel like last year it was just every guy's got to have a junior year, a year that they already had their feet wet, and now this is their time to like really make a jump forward, and then come for the last year and they kind of seal the deal off. And that's what my goal this year is, to kind of seal the deal off and show my fully developed athlete I am.
What's the biggest thing you learned from the reps you got in game last year that you can carry?
Just
now?
that I can do it, and that it's not like impossible. And I didn't weigh that much, and I feel like now I'm bigger and stronger, and it's even way easier than for me to do.
Yeah. How much have you grown then, weight-wise, in the last?
I'm probably like 290.
Okay. What were you last year?
I was like probably 275, 280, but I feel like I've gotten a lot. I don't know, my speed hasn't changed at all, so I've just gotten faster as the weight's going on.
Cade Pieper's bigger and still fast. So you've got this offensive line that has going left to right. Jack Doetzler's your first team left tackle this spring. We'll see if Bryce George and his trip to Iowa City changes anything. You've got Bo Stevens, missed a couple games last year with injury, back in at left guard. You've got Logan Jones, likely a captain there at center, holding it down there in the middle of the offensive line. You got Pete plugging in there at right guard next to Jennings Dunker, who might be the best right tackle in the Big Ten and one of the best in the country. You do not have, though, this year, and this could be a key, Nick DeYoung's gone, Pride of Pella, and Tyler Ellsbury, two guys who were fifth, sixth-year guys who could play all spots across the line. That depth's gone. I believe Michael Malinsky is the only senior and upperclassman left on those two deeps behind anybody on this. Everybody else is basically a true sophomore. So what do we think about the offensive line going into 25? You've got a lot of established experience there. Been talking about Pete for a while. See what the Bryce George, there's Bo Stevens if you're watching on YouTube. I don't know if Owen shot this or Curtis Fader or Mike, but we're looking at Bo Stevens, and that's like the only shot we have of Bo Stevens, and it's just him. Little inside baseball. That started as what we call as an ISO shot of Nick Jackson, and then it just turned into Bo Stevens pushing the Virginia transfer all around there. But yeah, there's familiarity and maybe some question marks about what this offensive line can do after they did so well last year.
Yeah. I would say, yeah, they're a question mark. Maybe not compared to what they were 2 years ago. Last year they were really exceptional, obviously, with Caleb Johnson coming in there and doing what he did, and he was quick to give them praise after every single game. But I still would be pretty comfortable with who this group has right now. As we're bringing up, this is the depth chart, I assume, the spring depth chart.
The spring prospectus.
Yeah, Logan Jones, Cade Pieper, Jennings Dunker on the right side, left side, Bo Stevens and Jack Doetzler. And do we assume that Ferris State kid George is going to come in there at left tackle?
My assumption is that he's going to come in and try to win that left tackle spot. He's played guard, but he's a tackle. You'd want him at tackle there. And
He played right tackle at Ferris State, right? And there's no chance he's going to play right tackle over Jennings Dunker.
Jennings Ron, and again, like we had a couple years ago, Dejon Parker came in from Saginaw Valley State, another D2, was an all-conference guy and didn't really see a whole lot of the field, but you also brought in Rusty Feth, who plugged in at right guard there and was an all-Big Ten guy coming out of Miami, Ohio. But that would get you up to what? If say he's left tackle, you'd have 315, 322, 293, 290, because Cade's up to 290 according to him, and Dunker at 316. That's a nice size offensive line.
The one thing that I think could be a question mark is if we start to see any sort of injuries on the offensive line. I don't think there's nearly as much depth there as we had last year.
Absolutely.
That's
a good point, yeah.
I don't know much about Cannon Leonard. I don't know the name Cale Winter. He was the backup center to Logan Jones. Myslinski, we've heard a little bit about. Leighton Jones, I know he's been out there some. I think he's got some game playing time. Trevor Locke, I've seen him in practice and stuff, but just these backups that they have on the two deep are guys who we just really, I don't think have seen a whole lot of game action so far.
Cade said Josh Gronowski would be a guy to watch, and Cade Pieper was the guy to watch for so many guys for the last couple of years. He said Gronowski's been Doing a great job. And then you've also got, we haven't really heard from him, and he was first year in the program last year, but Cade Bowrud coming in out of North Dakota and out on the 2 Ds. But we'll see if, hey, he was an all-newcomer up there for the Fighting Hawks, so we'll see if he's got anything too. Yeah, it's a group I think you're comfortable with on the starting line.
Yeah.
And then to your point, because you don't have the guys like DeYoung and Ellsbury, who you can plug in at 3 or 4 different spots and had to plug in at those spots throughout their time. You don't have that established veteran presence of a guy who's on the bench who's played 40 games, and you can throw him in if you need some. So if there's a leak sprung, so to speak, who's in there to plug it?
Yeah, that weak spot on the starting offensive line, right? I couldn't shout a weak spot, but the question mark was who's going to start at left tackle, and you got 2 guys who had not a lot of experience, but with Bryce George coming in, I think a lot of thought is he will plug into that left tackle spot, move over from right tackle, and then you have 3 guys who, 2 of them you thought were going to compete for the starting job. Maybe that's your depth, those 2 guys behind you. They get a full spring doing the 1 reps, and come fall, maybe your depth starts to look a little bit like that. That's what you kind of hope, but not those starting 5. They don't play the whole season. There's got to be some depth, so that is what you're looking forward to into the spring to develop some of those guys.
Interesting little tidbit here on a Friday. Elliot Clough, our buddy, sharing some news that Austin Peay transfer safety Gavin Edwards has received an offer from Iowa. Gavin shared that about half hour ago. He's a safety with 3 years of eligibility, and you wonder with waiting for a little more experience as we plug in some new guys there in the secondary for the Hawks, if a guy like that could maybe step in and help out a little bit there. Don't know a whole lot about him, but we'll take anybody. It's always fun.
There's a tweet up there on YouTube right now, and safety is one of those positions we talked about a few weeks ago, and you think you're good with those 2 starters, but should there be any injuries, football is a physical game. Maybe it's a little bit of depth. Maybe it's looking forward to the future. You said he had 3 years left?
3 years left. He's a D2 transfer originally. Transferred to Austin Peay in the winter. Played at North Greenville, school I'm not familiar with at the Division
North Greenville
2 level, but out of
Carolina.
Tigerville, South Carolina. There you go. Yep. So we'll see if that's anything. Who knows? Well, we started with Omar Young, so we should wrap this thing up with Omar Young. New running backs coach coming in from the New England Patriots, a ton of college experience, a ton of pro experience, and he takes over Liddell Bett's old room. And a lot of wondering what the running back room can be with Kamari Moulton and Jazz Patterson getting their opportunities. So let's spend a few minutes and hear from Omar Young as he met the media for the first time yesterday in Iowa City. And I think the reviews were he was a pretty fun guy to talk to.
What about the Iowa program stuck out to you as a place that you'd want to be?
I think when you just talk about all the different things that this place stands for, it's alignment, right? And you talk about a developmental program that's built off the right things, right? Of hard work, effort, graduating and sending guys to school and making sure they're good people, right? And when you think about Iowa, you think about good people, you think about hard work. And a lot of those things just stood out to me and were things that I was really looking for in terms of this next spot that I, ended up in. And so it was great when you look at it from an alignment standpoint. And so I'm just fired up to be here with the group of guys that I'm with. We all kind of see it the same way, but we see it differently. You know what I'm saying? So it's a good blend of like having the same mindset, so to speak, but like having different viewpoints so that we can all add value to, making this situation the best situation we can make it. Oh my God, when you talk about just uber talent, right? Like I knew the guys were good coming into it. I kind of tried to do my homework in terms of the process of saying, who is who and understanding what they were kind of about. But it was cool to actually get them in the room. It was nice to have them in practice. And then for me, like I got thrown to the fire, right? So the first day I come, and we got a skills and drills practice, guys. So I'm like, oh, right, here we go. And but it was good for me to be able to get a baseline interview of what they can and cannot do, so to speak. And then just be able to kind of build on those foundations. And that's what we've been doing, and that's what the focus has been on this whole entire spring is just making sure that we have a foundational piece that Coach Best already did a great job of establishing and just trying to build on top of that and make it a little bit stronger. So when we get out there August, September, wherever it is, we're ready to go. And I think for me, that's kind of one of the things is there's a bunch of different ways to skin a cat, and being able to see different ways to go about it, having different styles of running backs like we do right now, where you look at Xavier, for example, he's different than everybody else in the room. Whereas Kamari, TJ, somewhat similar but different, right, in their own rights. And then Nate's completely different from all of those guys, and Jazz is different, and Brevin's different, right? And so I think all of those experiences of seeing so many different ways to do it and so many different styles of running backs to do it has been super beneficial. You know, like I go back to my time in Green Bay when we drafted Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. Those two, again, different kinds of styles, but we made it work, right? And so just having all those different experiences to rely on has been great.
Moore also said later in that it's crazy how eerily similar that Kamari and Aaron Jones could be when you just put the tape on. Went on to say he's still got some work to do where he thinks about getting truly in that breadth. But hey, Mike's a Packers fan, I'm a Vikings fan. You want to make comps to Aaron Jones, please and thank you. We'll take a guy like that in the Hawkeye backfield.
Oh, heck yeah. You know, I mean, that's some high praise.
Yeah.
From year one, I mean, I thought Kamari did a great, or not year one, his first major year in the offense. I thought he did a great job. Aaron Jones was an elite level pass catcher and rusher. So, you know, if he can evolve kind of into not obviously his talent level, but into that kind of style in college, that'd be welcome to this Iowa game. And it would be awesome to see, you know, Caleb hand off to someone like that.
What were your first impressions, Omar? You were the guy who got the first questions. Or asked him if he wanted questions.
I never want the first questions, frankly. I'm like, where's Chad Leistico?
It's a lot of pressure.
He's the guy to ask the first questions. Give me a break. Yeah, really fun guy to talk to, and all the coaches are. We get such little exposure to the position coaches. We basically talk to them at Media Day in August, and then we have the weekly Zoom call with one coordinator. So it's like we basically talk to each position coach twice a year, more or less. So you don't get to know these personalities very well when they're the guys that aren't the coordinators. So he seems like a really fun guy. I really like Liddell Betts a lot, but Omar Young seems like a guy who came in. He arrived just before spring practice was starting, so he really had to hit the ground running. And I don't know, he seems like a fun guy. He seems like a dude who's going to fit well into that room and is going to get along well with this running back team.
He admitted, got most of the offensive names down, defense still working. That's what spring's for. Spring's for learning names.
Yeah, he just got in too. You know, you got to give him some time, right? He seems like a fun interview. I have to go back and watch that full one. I didn't get a chance to last night. I watched the players. It was like 25, 26 minutes long. But from just what I saw, it looks like a welcome addition. You know, like you said, Liddell Betts was a great coach. Mm-hmm. We'll see what he can do with these running backs.
It reminded me of. I remember he did it last year, and I don't know, maybe he still do it this year. Hayden Large, whenever he'd get interviewed, he'd like introduce himself and say, "Hi, nice to meet you," before each interview. Each guy that comes up and asks him questions, and Omar was the same way, where it's like he talked about. At the beginning, he said, "Okay, I need everybody to tell me your names and before we get started here, because I don't know anybody here."
It's a little press conference, yeah. John Steppe, Cedar Rapids Gazette. But feels a little different in that setting when it's just a scrum.
But then everybody that comes in, okay, hi, Chelsea Brown, KCRG. Hi, Chelsea, nice to meet you. You know, he said, hi, Ethan, hi, Elliot, nice to meet you. After everybody mentioned their name, so just friendly, congenial guy.
Yeah, and no pressure, just maintain the standard of what the running back room did last year, but everyone we heard from Kamari and Jazz last week. Kamari said he's really put an emphasis on blocking. So, hey, pass pro, especially we're talking about the NFL draft next week. You want to go play in the league, it's great if you can run. You better learn how to block for your quarterback, too. You got to do a little bit of everything. So that's another sign of what he brings from that pro game is getting those guys to help out with pass pro. And, hey, you want the passing game to open up, wide receivers, tight ends, whatever. Wouldn't hurt to have a few extra blockers in there, give Mr. Gronowski as much time as he can get.
Yeah. That's what it looks like this offense is moving towards, and away from that, not away from the running game, but like I think that offense could open up if the quarterback plays right. You know, one thing we didn't talk about when we talked about the running backs a few weeks ago was, I don't think we mentioned it, just how much bigger. He mentioned how Xavier Williams is different. 5'10", 230. And I wonder if he can get on the field as kind of like a thunder and lightning. Because all the other guys are under 200 or right at 200. TJ is 206 on this depth
Jazz
chart.
runs like he's 230, though.
That's a good point, yeah. He's like a downhill runner, but I wonder if that like lends Xavier Williams to get a little more playing time. Yeah. When he mentioned that, obviously they're all different players and they run differently, but Xavier's a different build than everyone else, kind of perked my ears up, like maybe he could inch over someone on the depth chart just to give a different style.
These are the things we really grab onto.
Yeah,
April
might
18th.
not be anything.
But this is a Spring King gesture. It's what makes it fun. It's why 2 years ago, it's like, Caden Weegan, that kid's fast. Where's he from? Oh, Iowa Western, Williamsburg? All right. Like, this is the stuff you grab onto, and that's what makes it fun if it starts panning out in the fall, that, you saw those flashes and they start to bloom.
Well, I think it was the last two kids' days, too, where we come back and we're like, man, Caleb Johnson looks like a NFL running back. And at the time, we're like, I know I said that, and I was like, man, I hope I don't get any heat, because that's kind of just outlandish the way in 2022 he didn't have, or 2023 he didn't have those yardage. But I mean, you could see it. Some people are just built different, and he definitely was. We picked that out, and I haven't seen Xavier that much. We saw him at the one practice. We got 15 minutes in. He did look big, but I'm excited to see him next weekend, to see what he can do, against the 2s and the 3s or whatever he'll be doing.
Nathan McNeil, who's an early enrollee freshman, was out there too, and I got a feeling they might be high on him too. Again, there's only so many carries you got that room, but hey.
In that specific practice, I think a couple running backs weren't suited up anyway.
That's true as well, yeah. But hey, he's in early, so we'll keep that name in mind for sure. So, we don't get the position coaches next week. We do get the coordinators though before spring practice next Saturday wraps up. So at Wednesday, 1:45, that's when we get Tim Lester, Phil Parker, LeVar Woods. I don't know if that's something we can live stream, but we'll at some point Wednesday have those interviews up on the Iowa's News Now YouTube channel and the Eye on the Hawks handle. And then we'll do our Friday podcast, breaking down everything we heard from them, maybe look ahead to 3, 4, 5 things we're all looking for out of spring practice and what we could get on Saturday. And then at some point on the weekend, whether it's Saturday night, Sunday morning, we'll figure it out. We'll do a spring recap and get all the spring game highlights, spring scrimmage highlights in there. And as always, free associate about who's the next big thing and start making bold predictions way far ahead. But spring practice flew by. April's flying by. We're already halfway through the month.
Here we go.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see you next Friday, 1 o'clock, and we'll get you those coordinator interviews when they are out. We are getting the heart of spring football season, folks. Thanks for listening. As always, from Mike and Owen, I'm Mitch. See you next time on Eye on the Hawks.